With a sharp blade, she cuts away her long hair. Determined, she binds her chest, hiding her identity for the dangerous path ahead. From that moment on, she cast aside her life as a woman, all for the sake of a single, burning purpose. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the fourth prince, Tenyu, sits alone, lost in his thoughts. His aide approaches with tea, noting the prince's gloomy mood. Tenyu simply retorts that if it's so obvious, there's no need to point it out. He explains his frustration, reminding his aide that he already has him as a guard and a beast servant. Therefore, getting another one is completely unnecessary. But his aide insists, explaining that it's tradition for all princes to have beast servants, and Tenyu is the only one who doesn't. Tenyu scoffs at the idea that his father is worried about him, calling it a convenient excuse to dump an inconvenient adjutant on him. The aide quickly urges the prince to quiet down. The aide tries to reassure him, mentioning that this new adjutant has received high praise for his achievements. Still, Tenyu remains unconvinced, though he admits he hopes it's true. After all, for his plans to work, this new servant needs to be stronger than any other. Just then, a guard announces an arrival. Tenyu looks up to see his new beast servant being escorted into the courtyard. As the figure walks closer, Tenyu's eyes widen slightly in surprise. Before him stands the famed warrior known as the High Commander, a celebrated adjutant from the royal forces. But looking at the official document, Tenyu can't help but think how incredibly young he looks. Prince Tenyu gives a simple command from across the courtyard. Take off your mask. Both his aide and the new arrival look towards him. The young adjutant silently obliges, untying the mask from their face. With the mask removed, Tenyu's aide whispers that they must have sent the wrong person, commenting that the newcomer looks more suited for dancing than fighting. But Tenyu sees something else. Behind those long lashes, he senses a deep, sorrowful look in the newcomer's eyes. He asks for confirmation of the servant's name, Rangetsu. The boy simply says yes. Tenyu can't shake the feeling that this person seems incredibly fragile. You look weak, Tenyu declares bluntly, stating that his beast servant must be strong. He then turns and gives an order to his aide. Bring my sword. At his words, Rangetsu's ear twitches subtly. The aide brings a sword to Rangetsu, as Tenyu challenges him to a test to see what he's made of. The prince gives one final command to both his aide and Rangetsu. Neither of them is to hold back. Rangetsu quietly considers the gravity of that order. With a sharp look, Rangetsu's demeanor completely changes. She calmly asks the prince if he's sure, warning that if she goes all out, she won't be able to guarantee his guard's life. The guard is furious, taking her words as a direct insult. But Prince Tenyu simply notes to himself that Rangetsu's voice sounds like a child's. Enraged, the guard lunges forward with his sword raised, screaming at Rangetsu to beg for an apology for her insolence. But Rangetsu meets his charge without flinching. With a sharp clang of steel, their blades lock, and the two face off, eyes locked in a silent, intense challenge. The guard presses his attack, but Rangetsu moves with blinding speed, easily parrying his strike and countering. In an instant, it's over. The guard groans as he finds Rangetsu's blade resting calmly against his neck. Prince Tenyu looks on, calling the display excellent and comparing it to a dance. Rangetsu puts away her sword, clenching her fist. She mutters that she had wanted to show him more than just a dance. Tenyu faces her, acknowledging her strength with a serious expression. But he gives her a grave warning, telling her to never let her guard down. With a sharp gaze, Rangetsu confirms she understands. Satisfied, Tenyu officially accepts her into his service, declaring that she is now his beast servant. Beneath her calm exterior, Rangetsu's mind is racing. She thinks to herself, I've finally reached you, my enemy. The scene shifts to the past. An official gathers adjutant children, explaining a selection process. They're told to drink a medicine that will reveal any special abilities, choosing a candidate to serve the fourth prince. The children whisper among themselves. While some are curious about beast servants, another cynically remarks that it's just a nice word for being a slave. A young Rangetsu and her twin brother listen quietly. The word slaves hangs in the air, worrying the twins. Despite their apprehension, they drink the medicine, hoping they'll be passed over. Suddenly, a cup clatters to the floor. Rangetsu looks over as her brother, Sogetsu, reacts to the bitter medicine, his body trembling. Rangetsu watches in horror as her brother collapses in front of her. Sogetsu gasps for air, his eyes wide with pain and fear as a strange power awakens within him. His sister can only stare in shock, whispering his name in disbelief. The official immediately points at Sogetsu, announcing that he has abilities and must be taken away. As the guards move in, Sogetsu desperately cries out for Rangetsu, begging not to go. Young Rangetsu tries to fight back, pleading with the guards not to take her brother away from her. And just like that, her twin was gone, leaving Rangetsu to face a lonely existence in a desolate home. In this world, there are two kinds of people, the ruling humans and the beast-like Ajin who serve them. Though Ajin are physically superior, they are oppressed due to their small numbers. The laws are cruel and absolute. Female Ajin are forced into lowly work or prostitution, while males must serve in the military and families are only allowed one child. Left all alone, Rangetsu could only watch her old life fade away, her heart filled with sorrow. Her days were filled with torment. Without her brother to protect her, she became an easy target for the human children. They would kick her to the ground for their own amusement, leaving her helpless. The bullies would laugh, cruelly telling her she was annoying and smelled like an animal. Rangetsu looked up at them, confused and hurt. They taunted her about her younger brother, making disgusting jokes about his delicate looks and how he must be making it work for the prince, their cruel laughter echoing around her. One of them leans in, a smug look on his face, reminding her that she'll be available soon enough. Rangetsu can only look back, her eyes filled with defiance. He grabs her shoulder, telling her he'll be first in line and to take good care of her body for him. Rangetsu glares at him with pure hatred, but the boy just grins back, enjoying her powerlessness. But she knew she had to endure it. The law was absolute. If an Ajin harmed a human, the penalty was death. So she ran. She ran from a future that seemed set in stone, get used by humans, become a prostitute, and simply exist until she died. Even in her own personal hell, she held onto one last hope, that her brother was living a better life in the palace. She believed that as long as they were both alive, they might one day meet again. But then one day, she overheard a chilling whisper in the market. A beast servant had been killed, and it belonged to the fourth prince. Her blood ran cold as the rumor continued. They said the fourth prince himself was the one who had done it. At that moment, her last hope died. A single tear fell as she came to a grim realization. This world was hell. Eventually, the day she dreaded arrived. She was sold to a brothel, her eyes empty as she was led away from the only home she'd ever known. In a dark room, she was thrown to the floor, her face a mask of terror as a man loomed over her. She remembered her guardian looking away as she was taken, and wondered if she could ever find happiness again after this. All alone, and on the brink of despair, she refused to give up. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed herself up and made a run for it. As she ran, a new resolve filled her. If she was only going to waste away until she died, she would choose how to spend her remaining time. A young Ajin with white hair and fox ears runs with grim determination, willing to gamble everything for her mission. To get her revenge, she decides to give up her life as a woman and take up a weapon, disguising herself to enter the palace. With a fierce look, she clenches her teeth, vowing that her fangs of vengeance will find their mark in her little brother's enemy. Now in the presence of Prince Tenyu, she feigns a sense of joy, masking her true intentions behind a calm expression. But beneath the surface, her mind is cold and clear. She plans to kill this man the very first chance she gets. Later that night, as Prince Tenyu sleeps, the door to his chamber creaks open. An intruder is here. The prince stirs, sensing a presence. In the doorway, The silhouette of an Ajin with fox ears stands poised to strike. In an instant, Rangetsu is upon him, pinning him to the bed. Her chance for revenge is finally here. Prince Tenyu's eyes flutter open, and in his sleepy state, he mistakes her for someone else, murmuring her name with a hint of confusion. Realizing he's completely defenseless, Rangetsu pulls back, coldly remarking how easy it would be to assassinate him right now. Prince Tenyu asks about his guards, but Rangetsu points out they were mere decorations, easily dealt with. Seeing his vulnerability, she requests to be stationed closer to his chamber. He agrees that she's dependable, but cautions her to act carefully, as her directness could be seen as disrespectful in the palace. Once outside, Rangetsu leans against the door, letting out a shaky breath. That was too close. She acknowledges his warning, knowing she must be more careful. She clenches her fist, reminding herself that she can't kill him yet. She almost lost control, but she needs him alive to find out why her brother was murdered and who was involved. And until she uncovers the truth, she will play her part perfectly, becoming his loyal and submissive beast. Sometime later, the Emperor questions Prince Tenyu, asking if he has officially accepted Rangetsu as his beast servant. Kneeling before the throne, Tenyu confirms that he has, with Rangetsu kneeling silently beside him. Prince Tenyu formally thanks the Emperor, stating that he's deeply appreciative of receiving such an excellent servant after going so long without one. Nearby, other princes and their beast servants watch on, observing the new addition to the court's power dynamics. The Emperor speaks of a legend where a sacred beast appears in the time of a great king, instructing Tenyu to use his new servant well. As they walk away from the throne room, Prince Tenyu quietly calls out to Rangetsu. But they're interrupted by another man with long, light-colored hair, who calls Tenyu elder brother Ryun and asks about his new beast servant. Whispers spread among the onlookers, questioning Rangetsu's frail appearance. But she steps forward protectively, telling the other prince that her master is not an object for display. Prince Ryun gives a dismissive smile, claiming he's just trying to have some fun in the suffocating palace. But his eyes suggest his fun is of a crueler sort, and Rangetsu's eye twitches, sensing the malice behind his words. His taunts immediately turn sharp and personal. He brings up Tenyu's last servant, commenting on how quickly he died and expressing a condescending hope that this new one will last longer, a clear, pointed threat that hangs in the air. Prince Tenyu's voice cuts through the tension, sternly calling out Ryun's name. Ryun's beast servant smirks, telling his master it's time to go, while others gossip about Rangetsu's arrogant attitude. Ryun turns to Rangetsu with a sly smile. He admits he likes her fiery temperament, but gives a chilling warning to be careful. He leaves her with a final, dismissive remark. An Ajin is only an Ajin, after all. Alone on a rooftop, Rangetsu reflects on Ryun's words. She already knew how cruel the world was, how Ajin are treated as nothing more than toys for others' amusement. The Emperor's earlier words echo in her mind, confirming this brutal reality. One side uses, the other gets used. That's just how the game is played. A memory of her smiling brother, Sojetsu, flashes through her thoughts. No one mourns his death. No one but her. Fueled by this memory, her resolve hardens. A sudden sound cuts through the night. Rangetsu leaps into action as another Ajin attacks from the shadows. Down below, Prince Tenyu hears the commotion and calls out her name, wondering what's happening. On the rooftop, she faces her attacker, another beast servant armed with a sword. They square off, ready to fight. The attacker lunges, but Rangetsu, armed with only a short blade, easily ducks under the slash. She moves with incredible speed, parrying the next blow and using the momentum to run up the curved roof. With a swift flip, she brings her blade down, disarming her opponent with a clean strike. In a flash, she's behind him, her arm wrapped around his neck in a chokehold, ending the fight instantly. Rangetsu stands over her defeated foe, her expression grim. There's no doubt he was sent to kill her. The thought sends a chill down her spine. Was her brother attacked like this too? Prince Tenyu rushes to the scene, weapon drawn, demanding to know what happened and if she's all right. Rangetsu turns to face him, her eyes filled with a cold, simmering rage. Looking at him, she's suddenly reminded of her brother, Sogetsu, and the innocent look he once had. To her shock, Prince Tenyu softly says her brother's name, Sogetsu. The unexpected word makes her freeze, her carefully constructed anger beginning to crack. The rage she's been holding back for years finally explodes. She lunges forward, tackling the prince to the ground. Pinning him down, she grits her teeth, her voice trembling with fury as she demands to know how he dares to even say Sogetsu's name. She accuses him directly, the words tearing from her throat. "When you're the one who killed him." But the prince's expression isn't one of guilt, it's shock. Stunned by her outburst, Tenyu grabs her, asking the question that changes everything. "Was Sogetsu a relative of yours?" The realization begins to dawn on him. Tenyu's voice is quiet but firm as he denies her accusation. "It wasn't me," he says, his gaze heavy with unspoken pain. He looks away, shame and regret on his face, and confesses the truth. He didn't kill Sogetsu, but he blames himself for getting the boy involved in the deadly court politics that led to his death. He continues explaining that both the killer and motive are still unknown. He was so afraid of another life being lost that he didn't want a new servant, but the emperor assigned Rangetsu to him anyway. That's why he specifically requested someone strong, not to protect himself, but so they could at least protect themselves from the dangers of the court. Overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow, Tenyu apologizes to Rangetsu, not knowing the true depth of her connection to the tragedy. He covers his face, his voice breaking as he whispers her brother's name again, consumed by the painful memory. Rangetsu watches in stunned silence as Tenyu collapses, weeping. She was wrong. All this time, she thought no one cared, but someone did mourn his death. Her entire world shifts. The man she hated enough to kill is crying for her brother. Coming back to his senses, Tenyu notices the cuts on Rangetsu's cheek. He points him out, but she dismisses his concern, saying it's nothing and will heal quickly. He gently reaches out, his fingers brushing against her cheek, his expression full of worry. He tells her the wound might leave a scar, and Rangetsu is momentarily taken aback by his gentle touch. She pulls away, insisting that a scar is nothing for an Ajin. Besides, she says it's not like she's a girl. The words hang in the air, and Tenyu can only stare, accepting her statement. Blushing slightly, Rangetsu touches her cheek where he had just touched her, quietly admitting to herself that he might be right. Standing before the prince, Rangetsu makes a new vow. She doesn't care about the imperial family's intrigue. Her only goal is revenge. She looks him in the eye, her purpose clear. If it means finding Sogetsu's real killer, she is willing to stay by his side and act as his beast servant until she gets a lead. Rangetsu kneels, bowing her head in a formal pledge. She vows to protect him from all those who wish him harm, urging him not to be afraid to use her power. Her path of vengeance has now become a path of protection. Early in the morning, within the palace walls, a hand elegantly holds a calligraphy brush. Prince Tenyu, the fourth prince, is focused on his writing when he calls for his aide, Taihaku. He presents the finished script to Taihaku, revealing it's a prescription. He instructs him to get it from the royal pharmacy quietly, as it's still early. Taihaku starts to say he'll send Rangetsu to get it, but Tenyu suddenly leans in close, asking if Taihaku himself was injured by the intruder from the previous night. A flustered Taihaku insists he wasn't. Tenyu sternly orders him not to wake Rangetsu, revealing that he was the one who was attacked. Taihaku is shocked, realizing the medicine is for a beast servant. When Tenyu confirms he thinks Rangetsu might be hurt, Taihaku, after a moment's hesitation, agrees to go get the medicine himself. Just then, a voice from the garden calls out, saying that if they're talking about the beast servant, he's already up. Both Tenyu and Taihaku turn to see Rangetsu casually doing a one-handed handstand in the courtyard, looking completely uninjured. Rangetsu flips back onto his feet and wishes them a good morning. Tenyu, still concerned, says his name, while Taihaku dryly remarks that he looks fine. But Tenyu isn't convinced. He steps right up to Rangetsu, getting incredibly close to inspect him for any injuries. Rangetsu, surprised by the sudden proximity, asks if he can help with anything. Gently touching Rangetsu's cheek, Tenyu observes that the wound from last night is completely gone, confirming that Ajin really do heal quickly. Rangetsu sheepishly admits that he believes he heals even faster than most other Ajin. A gentle smile appears on Tenyu's face. He's glad the wound healed so perfectly without even leaving a scar. At that moment, Taihaku interrupts, asking to borrow Rangetsu. He explains that if Rangetsu is going to attend to the prince, he'll need proper training. Tenyu agrees, leaving it in his hands. As they walk away, Taihaku turns to Rangetsu and asks a pointed question, if he's related to Kosogetsu. Rangetsu simply confirms that he is. Taihaku's demeanor instantly changes. He points a finger at Rangetsu, warning him with sharp intensity, "You'd better not die." Seeing Rangetsu's frustration, Taihaku covers his face, looking pained. He explains that he knows better than anyone how kind Prince Tenyu is, and how deeply distressed he was when he lost his previous beast servant, Ko Sogetsu. His voice grows cold as he states that someone of the prince's high rank cannot afford to be hurt or saddened for the sake of an Ajin. Rangetsu's expression darkens as he listens. Taihaku's words seem to have rattled him, forcing him to confront a harsh reality. He reminds himself of his place in this world. To humans, Ajin are not people. That's just the way things are, and he needs to remember that. Rangetsu looks at Taihaku with newfound understanding. He realizes what the aide is truly asking of him. Don't give the prince a reason to worry, and make sure to protect himself. Seeing that Rangetsu understands the situation, Taihaku seems satisfied. With that, he announces it's time to begin his duties as Prince Tenyu's servant. For his first task, Taihaku explains that there are hot springs outside the palace that the imperial family secretly uses. After a recent storm, they haven't been cleaned, and Rangetsu's job is to go clean them by himself. Upon arriving, Rangetsu is taken aback. The so-called hot springs are actually a series of enormous, steaming pools, a massive cleaning job for one person. He stares out at the vast task before him. But just as he's processing it all, something suddenly splashes in the water and whips past him in a blur, putting him on high alert. As Rangetsu stands in the water, he remains focused, sensing the disturbance. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Prince Tenyu calls for Taihaku. Tenyu demands to know where Rangetsu is. Taihaku calmly informs him that he's cleaning the Eastern Imperial hot springs. The prince is furious, questioning if that's an appropriate duty for his beast servant when he was supposed to be in training. Taihaku insists that being useful is always an appropriate duty. Tenyu slams his hands on the table, yelling about the danger of Rangetsu being attacked again. But his aide is unfazed, coldly retorting, "Then so be it." Tenyu is completely stunned by his aide's ruthless pragmatism. Taihaku explains his logic. Rangetsu is just a beast for the prince's benefit. He can be used as bait to lure out the hidden enemy who killed Sogetsu, giving them the perfect opportunity to eliminate the threat. This revelation only fuels Tenyu's rage. His eyes blaze with fury. He warns Taihaku in a low, dangerous voice that he will not tolerate this kind of thinking, not even from his most trusted aide. Tenyu regains his composure, but his resolve is firm. He tells Taihaku that if Rangetsu is a beast to be used, then he, as his master, will be the one who decides how he is treated. Back at the hot springs, the sun is beginning to set. Rangetsu, still surrounded by the massive cleaning task, wonders what to do next when he hears a splash and footsteps approaching. Before he can react, someone grabs him from behind and shoves his head underwater. He's held down forcefully, completely submerged in the hot spring water. He resurfaces, sputtering and angry at himself for letting his guard down so easily. His attacker is revealed to be another Ajin, a boy with black hair and cat ears named Yubi, who demands to know who Rangetsu is. Rangetsu doesn't hesitate. He grabs Yubi's arm and, with a powerful fling, sends him flying over his shoulder and into the water. He lands lightly on the rocks, watching as his opponent crashes into the water with a loud boom. The two beast servants immediately launch into a fierce battle, exchanging blows with incredible speed and agility. Yubi uses a rope dart to pull Rangetsu off balance, but Rangetsu manages to regain his footing. He twists in midair, redirecting his momentum into a powerful kick aimed straight at Yubi's head. They lock eyes, the tension between them at its peak. Just as they're about to strike again, a slow clap echoes through the springs, and a voice commands them to stop. The owner of the voice, another prince, correctly guesses that Rangetsu must be his younger brother's new beast servant. The third prince, lounging on a rock with his arms crossed, questions why a mere beast is bathing in the hot springs reserved for the imperial family. Rangetsu immediately bows, introducing himself as the fourth prince's servant, Ko-Rangetsu, and explaining that he was ordered to clean the area. The third prince lets out a condescending laugh, expressing his surprise that his brother, Tenyu, would assign such menial labor to his beast servant. Rangetsu's ear twitches in irritation at the obvious contempt in the prince's voice. Still, he maintains his composure, replying that he still has to finish cleaning the area further in. The third prince stands, dropping his outer robe as if he owns the place, clearly intending to use the spring himself. Rangetsu's eyes widen as the prince and his beast servant enter the water. Clenching his fists, he forces himself to bow his head in submission. Through gritted teeth, he mutters for them to enjoy themselves. Overwhelmed by the humiliation, Rangetsu decides he's had enough and starts to head back. Just as he's putting his uniform back on, he hears his name being called. He turns to see Prince Tenyu and Taihaku riding towards him through the forest. Tenyu quickly dismounts and rushes to Rangetsu's side, full of concern. He apologizes for him being out so late and anxiously asks if he's all right. He leans in close, his eyes scanning for any sign of injury, demanding to know if anything happened. The prince apologizes profusely, explaining that he was worried Rangetsu might have been attacked again. From behind, Taihaku watches the exchange with a stoic expression. Rangetsu is taken aback, realizing the prince hurried all the way out here just for him. But his thoughts are cut short when Tenyu suddenly panics, pointing out that he is injured. Rangetsu looks down and gasps. His wet clothes are clinging to him, making the bindings he uses to hide his chest visible. As Tenyu tries to get a closer look, Rangetsu quickly covers himself up and yells at the prince, telling him not to come after him for such a foolish reason. Tenyu tries to reason with him, saying he was worried because Rangetsu might be a target, but Rangetsu has had enough. He crouches defensively and declares that he should be attacked. That's the whole point. He reminds the prince of what he said earlier, not to be afraid of using him. But Tenyu pleads with him, saying he doesn't care about getting injured himself. He just wants Rangetsu to value his own life. I do, Rangetsu replies, his voice trembling with emotion. He says he values his life above all else, because what truly terrifies him is the thought of dying before he can get his revenge, letting all his efforts come to nothing. He says all he needs is to avenge Sojetsu's death. But Tenyu looks up at him from the forest floor, his own voice quiet but firm, saying that he doesn't want to lose someone else. With a desperate cry, Tenyu insists that he doesn't want to put his beast servant at risk. But Rangetsu coldly dismisses his concern. He tells the prince that he doesn't understand because he's royalty, and that he doesn't need or want his kindness. Taihaku is stunned by his audacity. His voice drops as he asks Tenyu if he even knows his reason for living. He tells the shocked prince that he threw away everything. He confesses the truth of his past. To perform on this stage, he ceased to be a woman. He has killed too many people to count, both humans and fellow Ajin, all for the sole purpose of getting closer to the imperial family. He asks Tenyu if he really thought it was a coincidence that someone with no special abilities became his servant. He makes his motive clear. The only thing I want in the world is to avenge Sojetsu's death. He looks Tenyu directly in the eyes and tells him to use him as bait. Hearing this, The prince's expression hardens, and he quietly agrees, saying he will happily go along with it. Rangetsu promises that even if he dies, he will be sure to leave a mark. This is his final plea. This is the only thing he will ever ask of Tenyu. This time, make sure you catch the enemy. Tenyu looks up at Rangetsu, his expression a storm of emotions, finally understanding the depth of his servant's resolve. As he gazes at the moon, Tenyu reflects on his own feelings. He admits that when he first discovered Rangetsu wasn't Sogetsu's killer, he felt a profound sense of hopelessness. A single tear escapes Prince Tenyu's eye. He admits that he thought his own story of revenge had ended, but now he understands it's only just beginning. Hearing this, Rangetsu offers a bitter smile. The knowledge that he must continue to live in this hell, he says, fills him with hopelessness. He tells the prince that if he was able to convey even a small part of that hopelessness to him, then he'll be satisfied. After that emotional confession, the scene shifts. Back at the palace, Prince Tenyu's voice rings out, calling for his aide, Taihaku. A new resolve has been forged. Prince Tenyu asks an attendant if the boy, Sogetsu, is still asleep. Uncharacteristically for a royal, he dismisses his servant's offers and decides to go fetch the boy himself. Entering the room, Tenyu finds the bed empty. A moment of concern flashes across his face before he spots him. The small, fox-eared boy is curled up, fast asleep on the cold floor. Tenyu gently moves the boy onto the bed. He watches him sleep for a moment, his expression soft and filled with a quiet melancholy. As the boy begins to stir, Tenyu asks if he's awake. The sudden voice startles him, and with a gasp, he tumbles right off the bed. He scrambles to apologize, explaining that he couldn't sleep all night and had only just dozed off. When Tenyu raises a hand, the boy flinches away, bracing for a strike. But instead of a slap, a gentle hand rests on his head. Tenyu simply says he's glad he got some rest. The boy looks up, utterly bewildered by the unexpected kindness. Later, the boy, Rangetsu, voices his doubts to Prince Tenyu. He questions whether he's truly worthy of being his beast servant, admitting he can't even use his powers yet. Tenyu simply tells him not to worry. He gives Rangetsu's head another reassuring pat, his smile calm and comforting. Rangetsu's face breaks into a wide, happy grin, but the sweet moment is cut short by a voice from his memory, warning the prince not to look. The scene shifts abruptly. Tenyu's eyes are wide with horror, trapped in a nightmare. Before him, a pool of black liquid seeps across the floor, while a woman cowers and weeps at the cruelty of it all. The dark, viscous substance continues to spread, pulling him deeper into the terrifying memory. With a sharp gasp, Prince Tenyu jolts awake in his bed, breathing heavily as he escapes the clutches of the nightmare. Sweat drips down his face as the last traces of the dream fade. He mutters to himself, admitting that he has severely underestimated him. His thoughts drift to Rangetsu. He acknowledges the boy's tragic and fragile appearance, but remembers his true purpose. Rangetsu came to the palace to kill him. Tenyu realizes now that the intense, burning emotions he sometimes sees in Rangetsu are all born from a deep, profound sorrow. He finally understands Rangetsu's entire plan, to avenge his brother Sogetsu, whom he believed Tenyu had killed. To do this, he had to distinguish himself in war just to get close enough for revenge. Tenyu reflects on his own past, admitting his judgment was clouded by his regrets over Sogetsu's death at such a young age. But now, after meeting Rangetsu, he feels that he might finally have a chance to atone for his past failures. A look of quiet determination settles on his face, his path now clear. Sometime later, Tenyu finds Rangetsu training in the courtyard and tells him to come along. Rangetsu immediately stops what he's doing and agrees. As they walk away together, another royal bids Tenyu farewell, leaving Rangetsu to silently follow his master. They travel through the palace grounds, passing by a serene garden with a large pond and an elegant bridge. Upon arriving at their destination, Rangetsu curiously asks where they are. A voice remarks on how unusual it is for Prince Tenyu to pay a visit. The voice belongs to a man with long, flowing light-colored hair, lounging gracefully among cherry blossoms. Holding a fan, he languidly asks Prince Tenyu what brings him here. Tenyu formally greets his elder brother Raylin. Prince Raylin smirks, noting that his boredom is about to be cured. Rangetsu stares, realizing he's now face-to-face with the infamous second prince. Prince Raylin recognizes Rangetsu immediately, saying he hoped to see him again. He asks for his name, and Rangetsu simply replies, Rangetsu. Raylin compliments the name, then summons his own beast servant, a quiet, cat-like girl named Yubi. With a sly glint in his eye, Raylin turns to Tenyu and suggests they see their servants dance for them. Tenyu clarifies for a confused Rangetsu that dance is just a pretty word for fight. Seeing it's just a way for his brother to kill time, Tenyu calmly agrees. Tenyu's easy acceptance of the cruel request shocks Rangetsu, as the two beast servants are positioned to face each other. Looking directly at his servant, Tenyu gives a simple, firm command, Rangetsu, do it. Rangetsu obediently agrees. He and Yubi walk towards the center of a bridge over a lily pond, preparing to fight as their masters watch on. As the two princes observe, the fight begins in an instant. Yubi explodes into motion, lunging at Rangetsu before he even has time to react. The two beast servants clash in a blur of motion, their battle for the prince's amusement now underway. As Rangetsu dodges a powerful spinning kick, his mind races. He can't understand why Tenyu would suddenly bring him here just to force him into a meaningless fight. He wonders if he somehow angered the prince, questioning if this is some form of punishment. While fighting, Rangetsu dismisses the idea that Tenyu would be so petty. But his distraction costs him, as Yubi angrily tells him not to underestimate her by getting lost in thought. Suddenly, Prince Raylin calls out to his servant and tosses a flute into the air for her to catch. Yubi catches the instrument gracefully and begins to play a haunting melody as flower petals drift around her. The moment the music reaches Rangetsu's ears, he's hit with a wave of vertigo, his vision blurring. The sound makes him feel sick to his stomach. He grits his teeth, realizing that the flute's melody is some kind of special power. Weakened and disoriented by the sound, Rangetsu is unable to defend himself and takes a powerful blow from Yubi. Yubi presses her attack, throwing a chakram. In her haste, however, she fumbles and drops the flute, which splashes into the pond below. With an annoyed grunt, she leaps onto a stone in the pond to retrieve her chakram. The fight momentarily paused. Prince Raylin bursts out laughing, declaring the fight over. He praises their performance, then turns to Tenyu, commenting on how strange it is for him to visit when he so rarely does. Raylin's tone becomes sharp as he reminds Tenyu that he came to visit like this once before. He says it was right after Tenyu's last beast servant died, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. Raylin reveals that he knew Tenyu suspected him back then. He correctly guesses that Tenyu, having faced another intruder recently, is here to question him once again. The scene flashes back to the past. Tenyu is on his knees before the emperor, desperately pleading to know why he must stop investigating his servant's murder. The emperor asks his son who he suspects. Tenyu voices his conviction that one of the other princes must have ordered the killing. In the flashback, the emperor tells Tenyu that questioning the other princes is pointless and will only cause a disgraceful scandal for the imperial family. Tenyu tries to protest, but his father coldly cuts him off, reminding him that he can always get another beast servant. The emperor dismisses his son's grief, stating that the dead servant was simply not a good fit, and then sends him away. Tenyu is left looking utterly crushed. Back in the present, Raylin taunts Tenyu, saying the emperor will just force him to stop again. But this time, Tenyu's expression isn't one of defeat, but of cold determination. Tenyu surprises his brother with a laugh. He declares that despite the risks, he has come here specifically to question him. Raylin speculates that whoever is targeting Tenyu must be jealous of his talents. He then absolves himself, claiming he has no interest in the imperial hierarchy and therefore has no reason to be jealous. As Tenyu and Rangetsu leave, Raylin watches them go. Tenyu quietly asks Rangetsu if he believed his brother's claims, and Rangetsu confirms that he did. Tenyu explains that it was foolish for Raylin to so openly display his beast servant's power, advising Rangetsu that such abilities should be kept hidden. He reveals Raylin's true motive. By showing off his servant's power, he was trying to prove he wasn't a threat. At that moment, Rangetsu realizes Tenyu is finally agreeing to use him as bait. Rangetsu hesitates for a moment before speaking up. Tenyu stops and asks him what's on his mind. Acknowledging his own rude behavior from earlier, Rangetsu prepares to ask Tenyu a question that has been weighing on him. He looks Tenyu in the eye and asks him directly, "Are you mad at me?" The question catches Tenyu completely by surprise, leaving him momentarily speechless. Tenyu lets out a heavy sigh, running a hand over his face. He seems exhausted and conflicted by the simple question. After a long pause, he looks at Rangetsu with a serious expression and replies, "Yes, I'm mad." But then he clarifies, clenching his fist, "I'm mad at my own uselessness." Rangetsu is stunned by the answer. Tenyu confesses that while his aide would tell him not to worry about a mere servant, he can't. He wants to worry. He wants to understand Rangetsu. Hearing this, Rangetsu lets out a short, sharp huff, a wry smile touching his lips for just an instant. A moment of silent understanding passes between the prince and his servant, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Tenyu breaks the silence, asking if the reason Rangetsu can't trust him is simply because he's a prince. Rangetsu quietly confirms that's exactly right. Tenyu seems to accept his answer for the moment, simply telling him it's time to head back. But as Rangetsu turns to leave, Tenyu suddenly grabs his arm, pulling him back with surprising force. Leaning in close, their faces just inches apart, Tenyu tells him that he doesn't understand either. Rangetsu looks back, confused. Tenyu reveals his dangerous new plan. He's going to confront all the other princes, making himself an unavoidable nuisance. He warns Rangetsu that this path means they will both become targets. So that's why Tenyu begins, holding out his hand in a gesture of absolute trust. Looking intensely into Rangetsu's eyes, Tenyu makes a stunning declaration. He tells his servant, "I'm putting my life in your hands, Rangetsu." He then makes a solemn vow. He will risk his own life to fulfill his responsibilities and capture Sogetsu's killer. And when he does, Tenyu promises that killer's life will belong to Rangetsu. The prince's vow hangs in the air, leaving Rangetsu utterly speechless. Prince Tenyu looked Rangetsu in the eyes, his voice steady as he placed his hand over hers. He was entrusting his very life to her, a gesture that left Rangetsu completely stunned, her heart pounding in her chest. Her body reacted before her mind could, yanking her hand away as if burned. This level of trust from a human, a prince no less, was something she was totally unprepared for. Without a word, she leaped away, landing on a nearby cliff. Prince Tenyu could only call out her name, watching her run. From her perch, Rangetsu looked down at him, her mind filled with a familiar bitterness. To her, all humans were the same, and she believed that those in the imperial family were especially unworthy of her trust. But Tenyu's voice cut through her thoughts, shouting that she was the one putting up walls and pushing everyone away. His words hit her hard, leaving her momentarily speechless. She yelled back in desperation, questioning how she could believe in anything when the world itself was so rotten. With that, she turned and fled once more. The scene shifts to a memory from the past. For Rangetsu, it had always been this way. Back then, as a child, she was thrown to the ground by a palace guard who cruelly reminded her that Ajin weren't allowed inside, telling her to get out. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded with him. She had heard her little brother was killed, and all she wanted was to have his body back. But the guard showed no mercy. He stepped on her, threatening to throw the damned Ajin in jail if she didn't leave immediately. As his colleague nervously pointed out she was just a kid, the guard spat on her head, an act of utter contempt. Just then, a royal carriage arrived. The guard quickly tried to cover up the scene, telling the royal inside that it was nothing of concern. A cold voice from the carriage simply instructed the guards to make sure the gate doesn't become soiled. Helpless on the ground, Rangetsu could only whisper her brother's name, Sogetsu, as the carriage passed by. She was left all alone, surrounded by people who just watched, abandoned in what felt like a living hell. Back in the present, Rangetsu stood on the palace roof, the painful memories replaying in her mind. But Tenyu's persistent calls pulled her back. He hadn't given up and was still trying to reach her. For a moment, their eyes met in a silent, tense standoff. But Rangetsu wasn't ready. She turned and leaped across the rooftops once again. Determined not to let her go, Prince Tenyu began to chase after her, pleading for her to wait. Rangetsu glanced back, her expression unreadable. The chase continued through the palace grounds. Two officials walking along a covered bridge were startled by a series of loud thuds and dashing sound from above. They looked up in shock to see Rangetsu running across the rooftops, followed closely by a frantic fourth prince, a sight they could hardly believe. Rangetsu moved with inhuman grace, hopping effortlessly across stones in the water. Prince Tenyu could only watch, panting and amazed at her speed as the chase continued through the palace grounds. Inside, Prince Tenyu's aide, Taihaku, heard the commotion and looked up from his work, wondering what was going on. Taihaku stepped outside to investigate and was surprised to see Rangetsu standing on the roof. He stared for a moment, wondering why she was up there, before noticing she wasn't alone. To his absolute shock, Prince Tenyu struggled to pull himself up onto the roof, still calling out for Rangetsu to wait. Taihaku could only stare, stunned, as his master gasped for breath, completely exhausted from the climb. From the ground, Taiga yelled up, asking the prince what on earth he was doing. On the roof, Tenyu was completely out of breath, while Rangetsu watched him with a conflicted expression. Suddenly, the prince lost his balance. He cried out as he slipped, tumbling right off the edge of the roof. Taihaku watched in horror as his master hit the ground with a heavy thud. He rushed over to the prince, asking what happened. Thinking Rangetsu was responsible, he started to ask if she'd done something, but Tenyu quickly cut him off, insisting it was nothing. As Tenyu got to his feet, Rangetsu simply turned and walked away. Taihaku watched her go, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. The distance between them was immense, not just physically, but emotionally. One driven by a desperate sincerity, the other by a deep-seated trauma. Prince Tenyu was completely drained, panting and sweating from the effort of the chase. Rangetsu paused, sensing he had stopped. Her expression was hard to read, a mix of frustration and something else she couldn't yet name. Watching from a nearby balcony, a man with long, light hair remarked to his companion, Yubi, that they were witnessing a truly interesting sight. Just then, Taihaku arrived, apologizing for the intrusion. But the man, Prince Ryun, seemed amused by the spectacle of Rangetsu and Tenyu in the distance. Ryun leaned in close to Taihaku, a smirk on his face, asking what was going on. Flustered, Taihaku could only explain that Prince Tenyu had been chasing his beast servant for some time. Prince Ryun noted that Rangetsu could easily leave Tenyu behind if she wanted, concluding that she must be going easy on him. Meanwhile, Rangetsu stood alone, reminding herself that she couldn't trust the prince. As Tenyu continued to follow, Rangetsu struggled with her feelings. She knew she was being immature, that a part of her simply didn't want to believe in his kindness. She felt like a child throwing a tantrum, running away from something that frightened her. Behind her, Tenyu continued to call her name, his voice strained. But through his exhaustion, his sincerity was undeniable. A thought began to form in Rangetsu's mind. She was sure this man would never betray her. She had a gut feeling about him, that he wouldn't hurt her, that he wouldn't even discriminate against her for being an Ajin. But just as she started to believe, a vision of her younger, traumatized self appeared before her. A painful memory warning her that he would eventually betray her, just like everyone else. The ghost of her past stared her down, forcing her to remember the hell she had endured at the hands of humans. Her mind was in turmoil. It's hard to accept something you've rejected for so long. To trust him now would mean turning her back on everything she used to be and everything she thought she believed. She watched him, still gasping for air as he pursued her. A prince should have been humiliated chasing a mere Ajin, but he kept coming, relentlessly. The sight of his earnest, exhausted face left her in a state of quiet contemplation. His sincerity was slowly chipping away at the walls around her heart. The vision of her younger self gently told her to rest, acknowledging the pain, but also the desire to trust. It was as if her own heart was telling her it was okay to let her guard down. In that moment of vulnerability, Prince Tenyu reached out and firmly took her hand in his. The simple act of holding hands sent a shockwave through Rangetsu. For the first time, she looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not a monster, but just a man. Tears welling in her eyes, she finally let out the words she'd been holding back, her voice barely a whisper as she asked, "Can I trust you?" Despite his exhaustion, Tenyu's gaze was filled with a profound gentleness. He slowly raised his hand and gently placed it on her head, a gesture of pure comfort and reassurance. Rangetsu froze. This was a feeling she had never known. She wasn't being beaten or held down. It was simply another person's gentle touch, something so foreign it felt like a dream. Tenyu then explained his promise. He knew her brother Sojetsu's death was covered up, and he intended to change the world and bring the killer to justice. He asked her to stay by his side and help him, telling her that he believed in her power. And more than that, he believed in her. That single tear was the start of flood. All the pain, the anger, and the loneliness she had held inside for so long finally came pouring out. Through the blur of her tears, she saw something she knew wasn't an illusion, a radiant sparkle. In her eyes, Prince Tenyu had become a ray of light, cutting through the darkness that had surrounded her for her entire life. Later that night, Taihaku was fuming. He grumbled to the prince, upset that he'd let that Ajin have his way and was now muttering nonsense about trust. Prince Tenyu, wincing from the sore muscles he'd gotten from his rooftop chase, simply asked Taihaku why he disliked Rangetsu so much. Taihaku couldn't quite put his finger on it, only that something about Rangetsu didn't seem right. He felt an urge to reprimand the beast's servant, but knew he couldn't since Tenyu had already forgiven him. Walking down the corridor, his thoughts were interrupted when he heard a noise coming from Rangetsu's room. He quietly peered through the doorway, and his eyes went wide. He saw Rangetsu's bare back as she unwrapped the thick bindings around her chest. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. A woman. His mind flashed back to a report he'd received from a guard. An Ajin girl, claiming to be the twin sister of the fourth prince's dead beast servant, had been at the gate. He remembered ordering his men to keep the information from Tenyu, not wanting to burden the prince with such matters. Now, everything clicked into place. The twin sister the guard spoke of, Ko-Rangetsu, was a woman. The thought seemed utterly ridiculous, yet the evidence was right in front of him. Inside the room, Rangetsu was completely unaware that her deepest secret had just been discovered by the one person who trusted her the least. As Sojetsu stands deep in thought, Ko-Rangetsu suddenly reaches out and grabs his sleeve. He looks back, and she just stares at him from the doorway of her cell, silent. Sojetsu is caught off guard by her sudden action, his expression showing a hint of surprise. He quickly composes himself, turning to Rangetsu and questioning why she isn't in bed. Sojetsu reminds her that she has work in the morning and walks away, leaving Rangetsu standing alone in the hallway. He lets out a quiet sigh, clearly troubled. Walking alone, Sojetsu's mind is a mess. He can't understand why he's trying to make things easier for her when she's the one who committed a serious crime. A female Ajin entering the palace by deceiving the emperor. He knows that to protect that secret, she'd be prepared to kill anyone who finds out. His thoughts are confirmed by the cold, determined look in Rangetsu's eyes. She would not hesitate to silence anyone who discovered the truth. The scene shifts to explain the history of female agent in the palace. They were never officially forbidden from serving. In fact, some emperors in the past specifically chose them as bee servants because they were known to be beautiful, strong, and intelligent. However, their allure was so powerful that they drove their emperors wild with passion. Their influence grew until they had seduced men of all ranks, from the emperor himself to the lowest servants, eventually seizing control of the court and sending the entire country into a period of decline. Because of this dark history, female agent were shunned from the palace. The only way for a female agent to become a bee servant now is to possess exceptional abilities, which would excuse them from the duties required of all other female agent. But Sojetsu knows Rangetsu has no such special powers. She lied about being a man and broke the law for one reason alone, to avenge her brother's death. As this thought crosses his mind, the scene shifts to him arranging flowers. He contemplates what to do. Should he expose her and see her punished? It's only been a few days since she arrived. He thinks that if he's going to get rid of her, the sooner, the better. But he pauses, squeezing a flower bud tightly in his hand. If he reveals her secret, it could backfire. People would blame the prince, giving ammunition to those who are already after his life. A dark idea begins to form in his mind. What if he just secretly took care of Rangetsu himself? He quickly dismisses the thought. For now, she's more useful alive. Although she's a girl, she's strong. As long as someone is targeting Prince Tenyu, he can use her power as a shield or a decoy, a sacrificial pawn. Just as he's lost in thought, Prince Tenyu suddenly appears, wishing him a good morning and startling him. Rangetsu watches them from a short distance. Tenyu reminds him about the work he mentioned earlier, then tells him to fetch some medicine for his bruises and aches. Annoyed, Sojetsu points a finger at Rangetsu, blaming her for making the prince run all over the palace. Rangetsu recalls the prince panting and struggling as he chased after her, a memory that seems to amuse her. A tiny, almost imperceptible laugh escapes her lips, and Tenyu immediately notices the slight change in her expression. Rangetsu volunteers to go. Sojetsu, remembering the prescription he wrote, hands it to her. He can't help but feel surprised by her sudden compliance. He watches her leave, thinking to himself that he never knew Rangetsu was capable of laughing like that. But then, he remembers the other side of her, the cold, menacing look she can give when she's on guard. Elsewhere in the palace, a soft groan of pain can be heard. It's Prince Tenyu, sore from his morning exertions. When Sojetsu tells him it's his own fault, the prince immediately snaps back, insisting that the blame lies with him, not Rangetsu. Sojetsu is left stunned by the prince's defensive reaction. A new suspicion enters his mind. Could the prince already know that Rangetsu is a woman? Is that why he's so protective of her? He quickly dismisses it as an impossible thought. Suddenly, Rangetsu comes flying back, landing with a jolt. She calls out to Prince Tenyu, her dramatic entrance catching everyone by surprise. Sojetsu asks where on earth she came from, and she calmly explains she took the quickest route from the roof. He watches her, still struggling to accept that Rangetsu is actually a girl. She presents the medicine to Prince Tenyu, who thanks her. He complains that he's in too much pain to go where he had planned. As he speaks, he suddenly slumps over from a wave of pain. Watching her, Sojetsu thinks to himself that the concerned expression on her face makes her look exactly like a woman. Rangetsu suggests a trip to the royal hot springs to treat his bruises. The prince loves the idea, and Sojetsu immediately agrees to prepare a carriage. But as Tenyu tries to stand, he wobbles, barely able to walk straight. Both Sojetsu and the prince seem a bit taken aback by Rangetsu's suggestion. Seeing the prince struggle, Rangetsu takes matters into her own hands, effortlessly lifting him into her arms. Tenyu is completely flustered, but Rangetsu simply tells him to hold still until they get to the carriage. Sojetsu watches in utter disbelief as Rangetsu carries the prince away. He still can't quite believe that this incredibly strong person is really a woman. They arrive at the tranquil and steamy royal hot springs. Soon, Prince Tenyu is relaxing in the warm water, declaring that he feels like a new man, while Sojetsu and Ranjetsu stand guard nearby. Sojetsu and Ranjetsu watch silently from the edge. The prince, clearly feeling better, looks over at them with a relaxed smile. He even flexes his arm, proudly announcing that the water has loosened up his muscles and made him feel much better. Sojetsu watches Ranjetsu closely, assuming she must be embarrassed by the prince's display. His mind flashes back to a previous moment when she got flustered while attending to him. He recalls how she was trying to hide her chest bindings. He thinks she's being incredibly careless, walking on thin ice with such a huge secret. From the spring, the prince tells Sojetsu to stop giving Ranjetsu the stink eye, reminding him that what happened was his own fault. He then adds that he's worried a woman won't be able to fully protect him. Sojetsu and Ranjetsu stare at each other, the tension between them growing thicker. Sojetsu accuses her of staring at the prince, which she denies. Just then, Tenyu playfully calls out from the water, asking Ranjetsu why she doesn't join him. Panicked by the invitation, Sojetsu quickly grabs Ranjetsu's arm to stop her from getting any closer. In his haste, he loses his footing and stumbles forward, right toward the hot spring. He falls in the water with a huge splash. The prince asks what he's doing, pointing out that he was talking to Ranjetsu, not him. Completely mortified, Sojetsu shouts at the prince to stop it. Trying to save face, he declares that beasts are forbidden from bathing in the royal hot springs. Ranjetsu's ears twitch in annoyance at his words. The prince tells Ranjetsu not to worry about the rule, but Sojetsu insists it's important. From Tenyu's carefree attitude, Sojetsu is now certain the prince doesn't know Ranjetsu is a woman. He sighs, defeated, wondering how he's supposed to handle this situation. As Sojetsu wallows in his thoughts, Ranjetsu shoots him a cold, piercing glare, clearly unimpressed with his meddling. Suddenly, the shadow of a bird passes over the water, startling Sojetsu. Ranjetsu's eyes widen as she spots it. In an instant, she leaps over the water with incredible speed, flying right over the prince's head. She lands gracefully on a rock, holding the tiny bird gently in her hands. The prince and Sojetsu can only stare, stunned by her inhuman agility. Sojetsu asks what that was all about. Ranjetsu explains it was just a bird and softly apologizes to the creature for frightening it. He can't help but be impressed by her quick reflexes. She then releases the bird, watching as it flies away safely. Sojetsu observes her, a complicated expression on his face. After they leave the springs, Sojetsu confronts her directly. He tells her plainly, "I don't trust you," and warns her not to let her quest for revenge interfere with her duties as a beast servant. Ranjetsu replies that she doesn't care if he looks down on her. To her, Prince Tenyu is a ray of light. Sojetsu is caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice, realizing she truly means what she says. With her hand held firmly to her chest, she makes a solemn declaration. "That's why I vowed to protect him with my life. I just want you to know that." Her words leave a deep impression on Sojetsu as he stares at her. He realizes he's never met anyone like her before. She is neither male nor female, neither human nor beast. She exists outside of any category he understands. Despite this, he gives her one final, sharp warning. If she ever puts Prince Tenyu in harm's way, he will cut her down without hesitation. They stand facing each other, a silent but clear understanding finally reached between them. Ranjetsu simply smirks. She tells him she already knows that, and that, frankly, it would be a relief. Her only condition is to make sure the prince never finds out, so as not to worry him. Sojetsu shivers, unsettled by her cold resolve. His mind flashes back to a memory of seeing her years ago, a small, battered child collapsed on the ground, but with eyes burning with defiance. Even back then, her spirit was unbroken. He remembers her voice, filled with grit, vowing that she would never give up. She had screamed with all her might, promising that she would find whoever killed her little brother and that she would never, ever forgive them, and that she would gnaw him to death. Sojetsu remembers the chilling intensity of that little girl's vow. Returning to the present, he finally acknowledges her fierce determination. He admits that he respects her tenacity and her resolution to avenge her brother. Ko-Rangetsu, he says, I tip my hat to you. Back in their chambers, the prince is feeling much better after his bath. Rangetsu asks him where it was that he wanted to go earlier. Prince Tenyu announces that they will go visit his eldest brother, the first prince. Rangetsu nods in agreement, ready to follow his command. They arrive at another palace and are greeted by a smiling young man with light brown hair, who warmly welcomes Tenyu. This is the first prince,